All right, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Toon Under podcast. I am joined by Pep Guardiola's twin brother, Jack, who's down in Brisbane. How are you doing, mate?
Very good. I was just explaining before, I just can't be bothered to shave, really. Don't really have time. So, yeah, it'll keep going until it gets too itchy, and then it'll probably go. But, yeah, when it gets to this length, it takes a good 45 minutes or so to do it properly once it gets a bit long. So, yeah, it's a bit of an effort.
I can see, the stress of the transfer window is already turning a little bit grey as well.
Yeah, I was going for the Brian and Burmo look, but maybe I'll have to change that now.
I just slightly.
I'll take
as
Pep,
long as
though.
most Spurs.
Pep's all right. I'll take it.
So today we're going to be talking about the transfer window, any updates, any ins and outs, and any news that may be circulating around the club. We're not going to go into any of the crazy batshit rumours because that's not what we're on about. But we're going to start off with a few days ago when the club announced the retain list for the up-and-coming season. A few obvious names that were going with Jamal Lewis being one of them. His time at the club was one up a few seasons ago, and he moves on to something new. But there were two names which were a bit of controversy surrounding this, where they're getting new deals. One of them being John Ruddy, who I think he's a 38-year-old now. He's getting on a bit. And also Callum Wilson. Now, everybody expected Ruddy to be released, and I think even Ruddy did as well, to be honest. But Callum Wilson, there was talks of him getting a new deal, but the way he exited the pitch after the game against Everton on the last game of the season, were you expecting that was curtains for him? That was his career with Newcastle done?
Yeah, well, the way that he, like you said, the way he kind of was on the pitch afterwards, it did look like that was him saying goodbye. And it probably still is. This is just all the club said was that they're still in discussions. So I know it sent people into a bit of a rage. But yeah, I think it's because it's come off the back of this nervy period of the transfer window where nothing's happened yet. And after Eddie came out and said, we need to do things quickly, we've all got Mike Ashley PTSD still. We've all got a little bit of anxiety after the last three transfer windows. So I think when that news came out, it just sent things a bit crazy. It was kind of like the tipping point for bubbling away, fretting kind of fan base. So I think that's what it was. But I'm not bothered about them, to be honest. I'm a little bit different from some people. Don't forget Marc Guehi got a new contract as well.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit different. I just think it's the low risk, and if there's a reason for it, like there will be a good reason for it, if Eddie wants them, or if Eddie thinks there's a value in extending them, or trying to extend them, then that's good enough for me. I've got faith in what he wants to do. It's not like Mike Ashley where you've got Isaac Hayden being given a 10-year contract just because it's cheaper than replacing him. He did that with a few different players at the time. So it's not like that. It's just part of the squad sort of management that we've got going on, I guess. And you wouldn't expect either of them to be playing, certainly not John Ruddy. But there's a chance that if Dubravka and Vlachodimos go, which they probably will, because we can get some money for them, or at least for one of them, then Ruddy would be third choice, So lots of clubs have got old third choice goalkeepers. I saw Scott Carson's going to be released by Man City eventually. So it's not really a big deal, I don't think, but I can understand why it caused a bit of anxiety and sort of the reaction it did get when it was announced in the context of everything else that's going on.
Do we need 4 or 5 keepers at the club?
Probably not, but it's
crazy. And I'm going to point out Lee makes every match day when there's 2 keepers named on the bench. Oh, fucking hell, 2 keepers named on the bench. Why not give that second one to a youngster or anything like that from the academy? What's your thoughts on that one? I know you probably mentioned about this before, but just as a bit of a refresh.
Yeah, I think it's probably more to do with the goalkeeping group. And Eddie Howe has talked about this before, where you've got your first choice goalkeeper, but the goalkeeping player, the goalkeepers train as a unit quite often, And he's talked about the value to the goalkeeping group of people like Marc Guehi, who are good trainers. They're good, they're role model positive behaviors that you want to see. Marc Guehi is obviously popular in the dressing room as well. He didn't make the Premier League squad last season, but he's not bothered. He's just there. He's just a fan who's there for the ride, who gets to train with the players. So with him, he'll be on about 10 grand a week or something, which is nothing in today's wages. So if it's a benefit, and if Eddie values the characters like that around the place, then I don't see the problem. If it was going to be taking up another squad space for someone else, then it would be more of an issue, or if we were actually relying on them to play. But a lot more goes into football and squads than what you see on a Saturday on the pitch. So if these players can help in any way, and like I said, if it's low risk, then that's fine. Like, you're not going to have 3 top quality goalkeepers. I still think we'd need to sign another goalkeeper though, to either compete with Pope or because if you get a good goalkeeper, it can transform the way you play, and Pope is really good shot stopper, and I was really pleased he did well towards the back end of the season, but obviously his distribution's not very good. So I think we need someone to compete with him ideally, and Dubravka, and especially Vlak. He just reminds me every time I look at him of that horrible summer and that awful period this time a year ago when we had to sell Anderson and Minte. Horrible time. So that whole thing's that's just grim, to be honest. So I think the sooner he goes, the better. But yeah, like I said, I think it's low risk to have that many goalkeepers if they're serving a purpose. So yeah, I'm very much in the camp of if Eddie sees value, that's fine with me. Get on with it.
You got about a low risk there, but high risk with Callum Wilson because his injury record, as we know, is shocking. If he goes and tears another tit again, or he pulls his hamstring, does whatever, and we've potentially kept him in the squad rather than bringing in somebody who's younger. I know you're a big fan of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who is available on a free transfer. His injury record, it's not great, but it's still better than what Callum Wilson's is. Would you much rather see that transition happen? Wilson go and Lewin come in? Calvert-Lewin come in?
Yeah. With Calvert-Lewin, I would, whenever these links get made and people don't like them, so all I do is try and look at why might this be happening, why might this be something that we're interested in. So Calvert-Lewin's 28, and when he's played in a decent team before, he's been good. For a while, he was England's backup striker behind Harry Kane. And when Ancelotti was at Everton, Calvert-Lewin was really good. He was getting double figures goals for a few seasons in a row. And he brings something different that we don't have. He would be free, so he'd probably be on decent sized wages, but he would, if he came here, he'd be happy to be second fiddle. With Wilson, no one's going to sit here and say he's had a good 2 seasons because he hasn't. He's had injuries. This season, he wasn't actually injured that much, especially towards the end, but he just couldn't get in the team. And then when he did, he needs to run to get his sharpness back, and he didn't have that, and we were relying on Isak. So I just think with Wilson, it could be that they think Asula is ready to be like a second choice. Wilson would be a third choice on a incentivized pay-as-you-play kind of contract. So in that sense, I would say that is low risk. The other thing with this is we know that we need players in other positions. So we know that we need especially a right-sided winger attacker and a centre-back, probably a goalkeeper, and it looks like we are after a forward as well. So I think if money can be diverted towards those positions this summer, because we know that PSR still is a thing, we still can't just go spending what we want when we want. We still have to be a bit smart with what we do. So it might just be a case of kicking the can down the road for 12 months if Wilson wants to sign a new contract. I think what actually might be happening here is that he is going to go. He knows he's going to go. The club knows he's going to go. But he just didn't want it to be announced then while he's potentially negotiating with other clubs about contract. So the club coming out and saying we're negotiating, we're talking to him, and that potentially gives him a bit more leverage when he's trying to get a contract somewhere else. And like you said, the way he said goodbye to the crowd would definitely suggest that he thinks he's away. And if you ever listen to him speak, or he did a really good interview on the High Performance podcast about a week ago, but he's a kind of character who's not going to be happy sitting there kicking his heels. He hasn't been happy this season with it. And even though I think he's been understanding that, he's behind one of the best strikers in the world. But he backs himself. He's got belief. So I think he'll want to go somewhere where he can play football. So I think that probably is what's happening here. And he just wants that extra bit of leverage with any clubs he's negotiating with.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think it's time we need to move on and part ways. But I think you're right with the negotiation tactic. I think that's a very smart observation. And that is probably something he is trying to do to get a few extra zeros on that contract of his, wherever he ends up. There's no been other real mentions of any players leaving from the club. I know we on the last transfer podcast we talked about Willock maybe going to Fulham. That seems to have died down a bit. And one crazy rumour that came from Sky Sports today, and that was Juve wanting to do a swap deal with Douglas Luiz for Tonali, which, to be honest, is dead before it even gets started, that one. So that's a bit of a no-brainer. But another one that has actually surfaced and came back up is Tino to Man City. Is this something that potentially worries you?
Not really. This looks like Romano, who is being paid by someone, or there's some kind of favors going on. Where this has only really come from Fabrizio Romano, he's tweeted about 4 times about this. So I'm not really worried about it. I don't think we're under any pressure. We're not under any pressure to sell at this point. He's come in. He's had 2 seasons. He's only had 1 season as a full regular, and he's got into the England team. He's obviously versatile. I can see why Man City would like him. But Newcastle are like a lot of Premier League clubs now. We're so wealthy in terms of the assets we've got. We don't actually need to sell him. And, we were in a difficult situation last year because we'd overstretched with the pursuit of getting better quickly, and it worked. But then we did have to sell those young players, obviously. So if they'd have come in 12 months ago, yeah, fine. They could have probably got him for a bargain price then, but they're not going to get him now, I don't think. What would his asking price be? You'd be talking 70, 80 million plus. So the selling clubs with PSR, Premier League clubs are so wealthy now that selling clubs have got all the cards, and it works in our advantage when we've got Alex Isak and we don't want to sell him, because we can just say, right, we can slap 150 million on him and no one will do it. We can do the same with Livramento. I don't think he'll go this summer. Maybe in the future we'll have to see what happens. But he's only just getting started here, really. So I think it just looks like not mischief making, but someone somewhere's got an interest in causing a bit of disturbance. But it doesn't seem like it's a credible link that might actually happen this time.
Hopefully that's the truth, because he is a very important player for us in both the present and the future moving forward. Him and Lewis Hall are going to be absolutely phenomenal for us next season, I'm sure. Now, moving on to the ins. Again, the other day, we got the long-awaited confirmation that Antonio Cordero will finally sign for the Toon once his contract with Malaga expires. I think it's on the 1st of July he signs, something like that. Now, is he one for the future, or do you think he could actually be the new modern-day Ayoze Perez, where he sneaks into the first team and doesn't look back?
Yeah, I was thinking about Perez actually with this one. There's a few similarities there.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's hard to know. He's got a decent amount of football under his belt at in Division 2 level for Malaga, and he's only 18, like you said. So it depends, really, doesn't it, how good he is, and how quickly he can adapt to not just senior football, because he's been playing senior football, but Premier League football. It's a big ask for him to come in and start playing Premier League football straight away. But it's interesting with young players. Like we saw Miley come in and do what he did. Lewis Hall's still very young as well, don't forget. But then you've got the likes of Alfie Harrison, who's in the reserves. He's 19. I think he's highly thought of, but whether he gets a look in, he's actually older than Lewis Miley. He's a year older than him, but he doesn't seem to be near the first team picture. You've got Garan Kwal, of course, as well, who we know. He's been doing really well for the under-21s towards the back end of the season. He's in a problem position for us. He's a right-sided winger. Is he going to get a loan? Who knows? It's hard to say. But with Cordero, it looks like he's going to be sent out on loan somewhere. Hopefully he gets a good loan. But yeah, it's hard to say, and yeah, with young players, you just never really know. The club made a big fuss of him, which made a few people worry that this was they were announcing the major summer signing. But I think that's just the current climate, and like I said before, a little bit of anxiety going around. But I would expect him to go out on loan. Yeah.
Ajax is the club that's been talked about, but we thought that with Garon Qual, and he ended up in a relegation battle in the Eredivisie. So who knows where he'll end up. Hopefully he's at a club fighting for something decent rather than staving off relegation. It's just going to help his career development. But now we're going to get on to the rumours and the names that have been linked with us. And they are all three names that have been linked with us over the past season or two. And the first one is a never-ending saga of Marc Guehi. I'll be glad to see the back of this one, to be honest, mate. I know it's kind of died down over the last few days or so, and with Palace may or may not be in European competition next season with everything that's going on there. If they do get booted out, can you say us going in for the player and Palace maybe reducing their valuation?
Well, he's only got a year left of his contract anyway, so that's means that it should be cheaper, or the negotiation point should be cheaper than where it was last time. Nobody wants to be reminded of last summer. It was just awful, and this saga was actually a bit embarrassing. Like the way that it played out in public was not good for anybody. It wasn't actually probably anyone at Newcastle's fault that happened. Steve Parish was doing what was within his right to do, which was negotiating. He decided that the best way to do that would be to leak everything to the press. So Eddie denied that the money that we'd offered was anywhere near the 75 million that Parish was leaking that it was. And I would be more inclined to actually believe Eddie on this, because we know that we didn't have a lot of money last summer or in January to spend, certainly not that kind of money. But I think if we can get him in, and like I said, there hasn't been any strong links at the moment, although obviously the interest's still going to be there. Had another good season, captained them to the cup win. I'm not sure Europe will play much of a difference in it, and what happens with Palace there. But from his perspective, he could wait for another 12 months and then he'd still only be 25, 26, and then he could have his pick of Champions League clubs. He might like the fact that we were really interested last summer. He might see that that's a good thing, and that he knows that he's coming somewhere where he's really wanted. But certainly we need some young legs, quicker legs in that back line, because Burn and Shaw, as good as they've been, Botman's obviously had his injury problems. We need some pace back there, and we need to bring the average age of the defence down a bit as well. It's really good that Shaw and Burn are going to be around for at least another year for Shaw, and probably hopefully at least another 2 or 3 for Burn. But we definitely need to get some pace in that back line. That could really be transformative for us. So if it's Guehi, great, and we'll see what happens. But I'm sure there's other options as well on the continent that we might not have been linked as strongly with.
If it is Guehi as well, that's that back line sorted for probably at least another 5 years. They're all at a very young age. We mentioned Holland, Livramento. They're pretty much the future of the club. Botman's still only, 24, 25, I think? And Guehi is a very similar age. That back line could be fixed for the foreseeable future if we can get one over the line. And I hate using that phrase over the line because it just reminds me of Pods when try to get all those deals done. Could never quite happen. I want to move on to the next player. Now, this player a little bit contentious. Again, he was apparently already one of our players, if you believe Fabrizio Romano, about 2.5 years ago, when he pretty much gave the here we go with Joao Pedro to Newcastle United. Ended up with massive egg on his face regarding that one. He did then make the move to Brighton, from Watford. Can't remember what the fee was, but apparently the talk is we are maybe in talks to pay around 60 million for him. This is a player who has undeniable talent, but there are now massive questions around his attitude and whether he would pass our famous no dickhead policy. What's your thoughts on the player and the personality?
This was the moment when Fabrizio Romano just went down in everyone's estimations, because he did do the here we go. It was 3 years ago. I was looking at the date. So it was when he was Yeah, he'd just been relegated with Watford, and then he actually had another season at Watford after that in the Championship, where he did really well. Brighton picked him up for about 30 million. It was 2 seasons ago. So yeah, hard to know about his character. You've just got to think that we do our homework on these players. So I think they obviously think that it's not that bad, or that they can handle, or that he's worth the risk. They like going back for players that they've been interested in for a while. I think that's clear, especially with with Botman, we hung on for a while. If we're still interested in Guehi, and the other person we'll talk about as well, we've been interested in previously. But Joao Pedro would be an interesting signing. I think they like his versatility. He can play across the front 4 positions, really. He can play up front or in behind as a second striker, or he can even play out wide. He's had a pretty good few seasons with Brighton. He did get sent off towards the end of the season, and there's maybe some questions around his discipline. But he's young. He's 23, turns 24 in September, I think it is. I think the word on him seems to be that they think he's got a high ceiling, so he could go on to be anything, because of his quality. He's got really good experience already for someone of only 23, so I think they like that as well. I think he might have been capped by Brazil as well, so he's in and around the Brazil squad. We've got a couple of Brazilians there that can help them. I think they attracted to his versatility, especially because it means we could potentially play 2 up front, or we could go in with the number 10 if we're playing against a defensive team at home, which is something we've needed. And 60 million, it's kind of the going rate these days for someone who's got that much experience, a bit of good Premier League experience. It's sort of what you have to pay. Brighton are not under any pressure to sell as well, because they've got players that can sell whenever they want. They are spending again. It looks like they're going to buy this Greek striker, which means that Pedro might be on his way out. But like I was saying before, Premier League clubs don't have to. They can just name the price if they don't want to sell someone. It's maybe a bit of a red flag if they're happy to sell him.
Yeah.
That's maybe a little bit of a concern. And he did get into a training ground altercation with I think it was Van Hecker, the defender, just before the end of the season as well. So maybe that's why they're thinking about cashing in. But definitely his potential is massive, and I think he would fit into what we're trying to do, and that give us that bit of creativity potentially in the forward line, which is what we've missed at times.
Well, 10 goals and 6 assists in 27 Premier League games last season. How does that fit for you in terms of where he's at against other strikers or attacking midfielders or wingers across the board, with players with a similar age in the Premier League too?
That's pretty average? Good. I think it's pretty good. Yeah, like I think anyone who can get, I know it's not double figures for goals and assists, but it's not that far off it. 6 assists and 10 goals. He did take penalties as well, so there's that to factor in. But they're pretty decent numbers, I think, for someone of that age. He didn't play every game. I think I saw he only had 27 appearances, was it, or something, or 27 starts? Right. Yeah, 27 appearances. So yeah, he's missed a good 10, 11 games, quarter of the season. So yeah, no, I think he would give us different options, and I think that's what we really like about him. Whether it'll happen, who knows? Craig Hope reported it, and then I think Sky jumped on it as well. Keith Downey jumped on it. So it feels like a lot of money for someone who's maybe not in a priority position as well, although the versatility is really attractive. He's a bit like Joe Linton, who can play kind of across the front, and maybe Eddie might turn him into a destroying midfielder, who knows? But yeah, I just think they like what he would offer in that sense, and maybe this move is the right time of his career for this as well. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, could very well be. I'm on the fence with this one. I don't know. I think just something about his character, his attitude. Ever since I've seen that flying elbow from him earlier on in the season, where I think if that had connected, that could have been disastrous for his career, as he would have been given at least a 5-match ban for that one. That was literally Ben Thatcher Mark II. And then again, you had that red card at the end of the season, then the scuffle, as you mentioned. I was wondering if he's just thinking, I'm maybe a little bit too big for this club now. I do need to move on. But the club to us, the move to us, could actually set him down, as you said. So who knows? Might be a reality check for him. Might be one that he needs for both his own mentality and his career. But we'll see on that one. See how that progresses over the next few days and weeks or so. Now,
he's quite. He's quite tall as well. I was going to say he's about 6'2", so he's.
I didn't know that.
He doesn't look like. I remember he out jumped Lascelles for the when Watford scored that equaliser in Eddie's first season. Yeah, that was him. Yeah, so he's actually quite tall, and Eddie likes his tall players as well. So I think there's, like I said, there's reasons why we might be keen on going there. The big fish in a small pond, possibly, but good players sometimes have that arrogance about them. So he might be a good fit if we can keep him on the right track. But yeah, at this point, it's all still just speculation. There's nothing actually concrete going on. And Brighton are very good at selling players, as we know. And Chelsea apparently interested anyway, so I'm sure he'll just go to Chelsea with Liam Delap and all the other players they're going to sign.
Who knows? That's more likely his destination, in my opinion. I was just about to get it on that one before we moved on to the next. And the next one is probably the player that excites most, and that is Anthony Elanga of Nottingham Forest. He has come on leaps and bounds over this past season. I think the season before, it was a bit fits and starts. He didn't really know what he was doing. Kind of bit of a headless chicken. But I think under Nuno, he's literally knuckled down and he has been a transformed player. He hasn't really hit the highlights of some of the other players at Forest, the likes of Chris Wood in terms of goals, but 6 goals and 11 assists, so pretty much the same as Joao Pedro, but the other way around. He played all 38 games last season. He didn't start them all, but he did play in all of them, so that's a bonus for his fitness and his discipline as well, as we mentioned. Of all the players that we've been linked to previously and currently with Elanga again, is he the one that excites you the most?
I'd probably put him on a par with Joao Pedro in terms of how excited I'll get about him. He's a good player, and he's been playing in the counter-attacking system for Forest. Like you said, he didn't start every game. Some games he kept him and Hudson-Odoi on the bench, and then he unleashed them towards the end of the game when everyone was getting tired, and to good effect. He scored against us before Elanga, I think, so we need a right winger. Like this, of all the positions, it's probably exciting most in terms of this is the position we really need to strengthen the most. We've had Miggy and Murphy for the whole period since the takeover, and only Murphy for the last half season. It's a good job he didn't get injured because he was, and that he had the season he had because there was nobody else. Like we tried Gordon and we tried Joe Linton, but yeah, we're going into a minimum 48 game season with the Champions League, and that's if we get knocked out the Champions League and the Cups at the first time of asking. So we desperately need a right-sided attacker. He's left-footed as well, and that's good. That seems to be what we want from that as well. So it's a positive sign that we're going back in for someone that we've been interested in before. It means that we've done our homework on him. Eddie knows how he's going to fit in. He knows how he's going to fit into the team. The price again looks to be around 50-60 million. Yeah, it's the going rate for somebody who's got a couple of decent Premier League seasons, who's 23. He's Swedish. He knows Alexander Isak, obviously, so that might help as well. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I'd be quite excited about him just for having the fact that we've got another right winger and somebody who should fit our system and what we want to do well.
His pace is electric as well. And it's not just his top end speed, that burst of acceleration. He's on par with Gordon, if not potentially quicker as well. And if you've got Gordon, Elanga, and Isak running towards you, you're a centre back. You're just going to step aside and say, "Come on through." That could be frightening and it could be deadly for us moving forward. He's the one that excites me most out of those three. Guehi, take or leave it. Joao Pedro sat on the fence as mentioned, but Elanga, he would be the one. Due to his progress last season. If he can continue on that progress and under Eddie Howe, no doubt he will. He just brings players on in a new light. But yeah, he would be the one for me. He'd be my go-to. There's not really been many other names floating around where it seems to be serious or anything. There's that Japanese fella, that Kubo, I think his name is. He'd be great for selling shirts. Looks a quality player, but whether he's Premier League talent, who knows? And that's pretty much about it in terms of the ins. But of those three players, we've got Marc Guehi, Joao Pedro, and Anthony Elanga. If you had to pick in order of three to sign those, who would you have as your number one, number two, and number three?
I think because of the priority positions in the team, I would have Elanga first, and then Guehi, and then Joao Pedro. Based on the priority positions we need. But I don't think it'll happen like that. I think we might get one of them first. We might end up signing a goalkeeper first or something. It's we might not get any of them, and that's probably quite possible as well. So it doesn't really matter what order we get them in, I suppose, as long as we're filled, especially those two positions, centre back and right-sided forward. Absolutely critical that we get players in those positions in. And like you said, we haven't really been linked too much with other names. So I'm sure, because if we sign these players, then the clubs will just go and sign replacements as well. So what we want to be doing ideally really is signing the replacements for these players before we have to spend all the money on these players. If you see what I mean, like Europe is a big market, and our club, I'm sure, will be scouting and they'll be aware of people. Transfers are very, very complicated. So we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays out. But based on the recent transfer record since the takeover, I'm sure they'll get it right. It just might take a little bit longer than we'd like.
Yeah, I was going to mention that because these transfers, because we don't have the flexibility with their finances to let a £50 million transfer just fall to the wind, kind of like how Jack Grealish has at Man City. Paid 100 million for him and he just hasn't set the world alight. We physically can't afford to do that. So getting these transfers absolutely spot on is the biggest argument out of all of them today, would you reckon?
Yeah, I think so. And these players, if you look at them, they're going to be at least 40 million, probably more like 50 or 60 million. So let's just say 150 million, that is on three players, and it's needed. We should have the money available to do it. It would help if we could sell some players, some of the fringe players that we don't need, or that we don't need as much as the other players. But it's still a massive outlay, And I know that the transfer fees are amortized, but you've still got the wages to take into account as well. So nobody likes talking about PSR, but it still means that we have, like you just said, we have to get a pretty much 100% hit rate on these signings, especially if we're spending so much money on them. Because if we don't, then we're not Man United, we're not Chelsea. We can't afford, because of the revenues, to just give away players that we've spent many tens of millions on. And we've done well so far. There basically hasn't been any transfer misses, but if we do, then we're in trouble until we can really increase those revenues. So I think that's why it's probably another reason why we don't want to take risks at this stage in players from overseas who might be a bit cheaper, but they're not a known quantity, so we don't actually know fully what we're going to get with them or whether they'll adapt to the league. And Eddie is a man who's next on the line if things don't go well, so you can understand from his perspective why he wants players that he knows and that he trusts. And that's maybe where a bit of that tension has come in with Paul Mitchell, if you believe what you read. We'll see.
Going to pretty much sign it off there, but I just want to bring you on this one, Jack. Now, if there's seven of us on this podcast, you tend to be the more level-headed one out of all of us that are on there. Dimmy is probably the least level-headed. That bloke doesn't sit on the fence. He just kicks his way through, then sets it on fire. I'm probably just next to that, then Lee, and so on and whatever. Your thoughts on the potential, and I'm going to use this word, mass hysteria on social media because we haven't signed a player 9 days in. What's your thoughts on that and why we should remain calm moving forward?
Yeah. I'm in the middle of writing an article for the NUFC blog about this, so keep an eye on that. It'll be out in a couple of days probably, but I understand why people are getting anxious. We've had 3 really disappointing recent transfer windows. We know that what happened last time we were in the Champions League, we need players. We know this. We've had massive gaps in the squad for a long time. Last summer was really disappointing, and there was all of that upheaval that went on. And then this summer hasn't exactly been stable so far, with Mitchell leaving as well. So I can understand that part as well. I think we've all got a bit of PTSD from Mike Ashley still, because every time something doesn't go well in the transfer window, it just reminds us of those times where, you know, Sky Sports would go to Keith Downey by himself at Darsley Park at 6 o'clock at night and say, that's it, Newcastle closed for business. They failed to sign Hamza Chowdhury on loan from Leicester. There was the transfer window where we only signed Loic Remy. There was other ones where we only signed even Lee Bowyer and Vernon Anita going back a bit more as well. Where we needed to strengthen. So this is part of our psyche still. That Newcastle United and transfer windows just don't go nicely together. And then Eddie, to be fair, came out and said we need to act quickly. So I think that added some fire to the flames as well. But I think, you know, you just have to look at the timing. So we're only 9 days into a 3-month transfer window, and the other clubs are spending, fair enough. But like Delap had a release clause, and so did Cunha. So I think that's why those deals have happened quicker. And you've got the Club World Cup as well. So some clubs are trying to do business before that, including Man City. Liverpool are going crazy, but they didn't really spend much money last summer as well. So I think you just have to look at the fact that we're about 15% of the way into the transfer window. There's still a lot to go. There's still 4 weeks before pre-season starts as well. And I know that we said these things last summer as well. So it's kind of not much consolation at the moment until things start happening. So I understand the anxiety, the concern. People are just worried that we're not going to get what we need. But I would just say we're just going to have to be a bit patient. It's not a nice thing to have to do, especially when all we do is wake up every morning and scroll through Twitter to see if we've signed anybody yet or if there's been any concrete transfer links. That's what we do at this time of year instead of getting up to watch the football. But I just think that the owners have been here for 3.5 years now. And look at what we've done. You know, we've qualified for the Champions League twice. We have won a trophy. So even though it's felt a bit stunted at times because there's been external restrictions placed on us, we've still been successful. We've got the best manager that we could ever wish to have as well. So I think this is what I was saying when it comes to Wilson and Ruddy. Just trust what he's doing. Like I've got so much trust and faith in that man, and I know he won't get everything right, but I know more that he'll get more right than he doesn't get right. Agreed. So if he wants to extend John Ruddy, I think I said in the chat, if he wants to bring back a 65-year-old John Allen Boomsong and pair him with Dan Burn, that's fine with me. I think I'll know that there's a good reason for it. So let's just see what happens. Like I'll start to get a bit agitated if we haven't brought anybody in by the start of pre-season, because I know that Eddie wants that. He wants to try and get his squad settled, and I think it's important for optics, even just to get one person in before pre-season, to get at least one in, and then we can go from there and we can see what else happens. But it's not in our control, a lot of it. You know, we'll have to wait for the market to move. We'll have to wait for other clubs to make their moves, and then we can do our bit. And we're not in control of selling clubs as well. So unless we're just going to go in and blow teams out the water, then it's just going to take a bit of time. So I think come back to me in 4 weeks if we still haven't signed anybody. But 4 weeks is a long time, you know. I think we will have by then, and I think we'll all be feeling a lot calmer. So keep the faith. We're on the right track, I think.
Wise words from a wise man there. We will end it there. Let us know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on the current transfer window situation, and on that 1, 2, 3 you mentioned with Elanga, Pedro, and Guehi, which order you would like them to join to the club, or if you'd prefer somebody else. But we leave it there. But we will be back with another episode. Maybe we'll get some breaking news over the next few days, of which so we will jump on. If not, we will do maybe another weekly roundup, just like we've done today, on all the current news and anything breaking. But Jack, thanks very much for joining me. I will catch you on the next one.
Cheers, Craigie. See ya.